Welcome to a very different episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I'm your host, Karen E. Osborne, and hopefully you've been following me for the 2.5 years that I have been doing this show weekly. 2.5 years, right? Oh, and I am the author of Getting It Right, Tangled Lives, Reckonings, and then the brand new True Grace, my first historical fiction. Product placement. I want you to meet my guests today. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves because this episode, I should say this episode is about a very new idea. This is an author's, how would you say it, Brandy? An author's
It's writing reality. So it's an author's reality show, reality TV.
Author's reality show. So a little different, right? So let me start by asking Brandy Miller to introduce herself to you.
Hi, I'm Brandy M. Miller. I'm an international speaker and award-winning author. And the concept for writing reality was mine. It came in 2014 is when I first had the idea. It would take me several failed attempts before we got it going. And but in the process of my original concept was going to take $2.5 million to execute. In the process of trying to get the crowdfunding campaign out there and awareness of it, I hopped on a podcast and met Winona and Jade, the And I Thought ladies, and they partnered up with me. And it was through that partnership over the years that the show idea concept evolved. And then Winona kind of kicked my booty and we stripped it down to its core basics and put it together with $0 budget using Zoom and free labor. That's how it came to be.
Thank you, Brandy. We're going to hear more about that, more about the show and everything. But right now, I just like everybody just to introduce themselves. And Brandy, what do you write? What kind of books do you write?
I write a lot about writing, but then I also have a fiction book out there called The End of Purgatory, and a children's fiction book that's called The Secret of the Lantern. So,
great. Excellent. So, Winona, let's tell us about how you kicked Brandy's butt. Introduce who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Winona Marie. I'm one of the And I Thought ladies. There's normally a JD to my right or my left, but she's not here today. And we write poetry, go figure. We're one of the few people that we know that can say that we're poets full time, like it actually pays the bills. And we have 17 books, and I'm actually, my bigger pain thing up until this poetry thing took off was a genre noir gangster story that was more than 26 books long. I am relaunching it. So I'm working on the third book, and Brandy is kicking my butt and making me make these characters grow because I started when I was 12. So she's been like, hey, they need to grow up because you grew up. But how I kicked Brandy's butt was that, like, give her, I just shouldn't say, but I gave her a little push. Because I believe firmly that if you have an idea in this day and age, there's a way to do it. A lot of times you just have to take it and strip it down until it's something that manageable that you can do. And that's what I feel like we did together.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then we've got 3 author contestants with us. So let's start with Wolf.
Yeah. Hi, Karen. Sorry, my memory isn't the greatest. I have these vaguely remembered delusions of wanting to protect the Earth, the extraterrestrials for Men in Black. But then I think I looked into a neuralizer. I do have centuries of memories of cybersecurity and politics and finance that some agency probably implanted, but who cares? They make great thrillers with quirky characters and high-tech gadgets pitted against evil villains with wild weapons. Like the series behind me, Cyberspiracy, it follows a pink-haired hacker girl who saves the world, of course, using technology.
Very cool. Very cool. And John, please introduce yourself.
Hi, well, thank you once again for having me on this program. It's fantastic to be here. I've only have one book that I'm working on. It's almost finished. Edits are going through. I've been working on it for quite some time. My job pays the bills, but I have a dream to, one day be a pretty good author. And so that's why in my spare time I write. And my book is basically dystopian fantasy. It's really just I read 3 newspapers a day and have since I was 17 is when I got my first periodical. And so I love public policy because I love it. It's like the biggest study of human history ever, psychologically. So that's what I like to. If people aren't reading the newspapers as much anymore, then I like to bring some of society's challenges to the written word. So that's why I write, and so I'm very honored to be here.
Wow, and we certainly our world out there certainly gives you a lot to work with. Lots of
Yeah.
humor and scary stuff. And yes.
Yeah.
And Mike, would you introduce yourself, please?
Well, hi, Karen, and hello to all the rest of you cohorts. I'm Mike Nelson. I have written a few books. I am a retired physician, and the first 3 novels that I wrote were rather boring. They were about growing up in the inner city of Chicago and taking the protagonist through the war and into his survival after PTSD, and then discovering not only did he have it, but his father did as well, and the two of them find a way to work it out together. My third book was definitely autobiographical. It was about me practicing in a rural Amish community where I did house calls 3 days out of every 5, and practiced emergency medicine on the back seat of a pickup truck. And so that was my third novel. And after that, I thought I was done writing. I was pretty much empty, and I had told my story and had never written before I was 68 when I wrote my first book. And my daughter convinced me that I probably needed to keep writing. And I said I didn't want to have anything else to write about. And she said, then write about us. And so what she said was, every year since I was 8 years old, you've taken me on an adventure, taken me out of school and taken me someplace to learn something about some place, something, somewhere. And every year we learned something and we had an adventure and we bonded. She's 22 years old now, and we still do it every year for a couple of weeks every year. And so what we did was we took those trips and made them magical. And we made the young girl who was in the book a magical witch, who, by the way, has powers that continue to grow the more she sees the magic in the world around her. So I've written now 2 young adult books, which I look in the mirror and I wonder, what is the matter with me?
That's awesome. That is awesome. You and I have something in common. My first novel didn't come out till I was 69 years old. So we have that in common, and I'm 4 books later. So you keep going.
Good for you.
So Brandy, just give us briefly the concept. What is the concept of this reality show? And what are you hoping will come of it?
It's 4 writers competing over 4 weeks to put together a novel that they can pitch for a publishing contract. So they're competing for one publishing contract. And
Wow. And they're writing the whole novel in 4 weeks?
that's the concept. That was the original concept, but that kind of changed a little bit. We've got writers who are in midstream of writing their book. So that's more of where they were at when they started the show. And it's still concept and development, but not quite as bare bones as I'd originally envisioned. But I liked it. It worked well. And
You said that part of it was
Mm-hmm.
for the writers to really get to know publishers, right? To
Yes,
understand
yeah.
the process.
Exactly. My thought was that so many times what really stops people from getting their books out there is that they don't know what publishers want. They don't know what publishers expect. They don't know how to get past the gatekeepers, and they don't know what they're doing wrong. And so if they could be put in a room with the publishers and the industry gatekeepers and the PR people and the marketers and all the other stuff, they could hear directly from them what they're doing wrong or what they need to change or why they didn't get picked over somebody else. And that would really help them grow as authors.
Wow, that's a great idea. And well, Nona, what taught you when Brandy first was telling you about this? And here's my idea, and here's what I want to do. What did you like about it? What caught your imagination?
Okay, what I liked about it is I already knew that Hollywood felt that authors and writers in general were very boring people, but what she was bringing to it was a level of excitement and drama. And I've known that there are at least 13 shows that have been pitched and that I know of, pitched and said no to, and then there's 13 more in development right now that we know of, that I know of, that are like they're having trouble getting out there. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting to me was not only is she bringing the drama of writing, she's taking writers out of that personal space where we're just us and a computer and and the writing crowd, and making it more relatable to people by putting it in a format like Shark Tank and that sort of thing in order to make people be interested. One of the things that has always bothered me is while growing up, there's always a show for acting. There's a show for acting, like the Ed McMahon sort of thing, and then you have a show for singing and a show for juggling and every other sort of thing. But then when you go, I need a show for writers. The only other place that had done it before was the 3-day, 72-hour novel competition, and they did it like for 3 years in Canada. And I was like, this can be done. This can be done. In fact, I don't know if you remember, Brandy, but the first time that you told me, like a week later, I was like, I have a house, I have a camera, and I have 3 judges. And you were like, nope, that's not what I'm looking for. I was like, oh, okay.
I had some very grand ideas at the time about how to do it, how I wanted it done. And I think part of the reason it took 9 years was because it took that long for me to let go of my original vision and to allow a new vision to sort of evolve from that original vision.
I'm big on once
That's
you
a
have a
lesson
vision, it should
too.
get done.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a great lesson too. Sometimes when we get stuck, it's kind of why am I stuck? Why isn't this working? Maybe I just need to rethink it, not give it up. Rethink it. Yeah. So, Wolf, you were why did you join this competition? Why did you decide that this was like, oh, I can do that? What was it about it that made you want to jump in?
It was exactly what Brandy and Winona said. You get to hear firsthand from people in the industry what matters to them. That's the problem. You get a lot of information on the internet, but it's often from other writers because the people in the industry do not have time to do this. And how often do you actually get to talk to these people? If you're lucky, you can book an appointment with them at a conference and they'll give you 15 minutes. The ability to have your pitch judged, your book blurb judged, possibly your actually writing judged if you make it to the final rounds by 5-6 industry people, to me was invaluable.
Yeah, that sounds like it. That sounds awesome. So, John, what were some of the big challenges as you tried to participate? NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing, November 50,000 words in 30 days, which is like 1,600 words a day that I participated with my son and my grandson. That was crazy enough. So, what were some of the pressures, John? What was great about the experience, and what were some of the like pressures that you went through when you were as a contestant?
I submitted my novel to literary agents 108 times or so, and I got rejection each time. But what frustrated me was, like Wolf was saying, and Brandy too, I believe, was just they don't give you feedback. The agents, they're looking for something that can sell so that they can have, make some money and everyone's happy. But the reason why this contest was just amazing was because I doubted whether or not I've been working on this novel for 7 years, and I had it outlined at 85 pages before I even started going, but I was too afraid to like start. But once I got over that fear and just said forget about it, I mean, every artist was at first an amateur, so I did that, and this show was able to provide what all those literary agents didn't have the time to, which was, first off, which was amazing for me, my work is good. Like, my ideas were good. They're not bad. I was afraid that all those literary agents, it was just, this is garbage and go on. This time, the publishers told me what they liked. I was amazed that real publishers loved some of what I had written, and they gave me feedback. And, there's a lot of people out there trying to be discovered by the publishing industry, and it's just, I think people are starting to read more. I read some stuff about Barnes and Noble opening more stores and other things, but if people are reading more, that's great, because part of the challenge is, in order to get noticed in today's world, to get your book out there, you really have to take any chance you can. And this was a golden opportunity, not just to meet publishers, but to learn what to do to make the book, so the next time a publisher or a literary agent might say yes, or the publishers might just offer a contract or something.
That's wonderful. That is so great. Now, Mike, was this your first book that you participated in this contest with? Kind of, what were you thinking when you said, "Oh, this sounds like a really good idea"? What did you what were you thinking? What were you feeling?
Mike, you're on
You're
mute.
on mute.
I don't remember thinking this sounds like a really good idea, to be
No.
honest with you. One thing that I've learned is when Jade and Winona approach me about something, it doesn't really make much difference what it's going to be. If they open the door and lay out the doormat, I'm coming through. They've never steered me wrong, and every interaction I have with them is a gift. And so when they made this offer, to be honest with you, I had just finished and tied a bow on the last novel and sent it off for publishing to be released. It actually released today, to be honest with you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And so the tank was pretty empty. I was, just recovering, so to speak. And they suggested I do this, and so I thought I'd take it straight up. And I didn't think about it. I didn't do anything about it until the night that the contest opened. And they said, take 10 minutes and think of a novel that you think you could write and publish in a month. And so I pitched my idea that I came up with in like 7 minutes. And and I discovered some really amazing things. One thing was amazing was all the critiques that the publishers and the judges offered us. Not just what's great, what's good, or anything else, but I really want to know what I did wrong too. And I want my mistakes pointed out to me, or at least what they think were my mistakes. And they were not shy about offering those. And so I was able to learn a lot. And one of the other things that I learned, just like in NaNoWriMo, is that if you try to write with any kind of speed, if you try to write with a deadline, you write garbage. And so I started out with a 10-minute idea for a book, and I wrote like a maniac. And when I got 20,000 words in, I realized that about 5,000 of them were useless. And so I deleted them all. And now I have time to take an idea, which everyone agreed was not a bad idea, and tailor it into something that I'm proud of having done. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of that. I wouldn't have even known whether or not I could accomplish it if it hadn't been for an event like this. It's pretty amazing.
Cool. Cool. In defense of NaNoWriMo, I will just say that it depends on how you use it. If you think of it as a beginning, if you think of it as just to get started. My grandson wrote 3 novels during NaNoWriMo, 3 years, and my son wrote a bunch of short stories, and 6 of them are now published in literary magazines because they just looked at it as start. So I just don't want to, we're not knocking NaNoWriMo.
No. And
Whatever
Oh,
works
no.
for you. It's
Oh,
okay.
this
no,
show
I-
would not exist without NaNoWriMo, because
I'd like
it was
to say-
NaNoWriMo that got me to write my first book and to begin actually getting into the writing industry and publishing and things like that without NaNoWriMo. But I always say that the best advice I got was the first year I participated in NaNoWriMo was give yourself permission to write the biggest pile of horse dung the world has ever seen and
Do
just
it.
write with it, right? Because
Yes.
once you get it done, you know you can do it. And then you have the chance to go sort through the horse dung and find the seeds of greatness that lie within it, and then cultivate those seeds out of the fertilizer that you just laid down. So
I
Very
would
good.
say, like, I hope
Great
that everyone.
analogy. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you so much. So now
I wanted to say that like everyone has been talking about NaNoWriMo, and I think it's amazing. In fact, I did not know NaNoWriMo existed until someone mentioned Grant Faulkner, and I went, "Oh my God, that's who made it." But I was like, I personally loved Brandy's idea in the first place because, as I said before, there's a contest where you write a novel in 72 hours from beginning to end, and I went every year since I was like 14, wrote a novel every year. So every year I came out with a new novel because
Wow.
72 hours, it was beginning to end done. So I was like, yo, be happy you have a month.
and I'm grateful that I had years. So that's all good. That's all good. So I have one more question about the show, and then I'd love to hear from the writers, kind of what's next. What's next? If you could be thinking about what's next. And because this show is what are you reading? What are you writing? I'm also going to ask you about a book recommendation because that's one of the reasons our audience likes watching the show because they like to hear what writers read. But I wanted to ask Brandy, what happens next for the show? So there are 3, right? There are 3 episodes out there.
4 episodes.
4 episodes that people can go and watch
Mhm.
right now and learn
Hey, Kate,
from.
Yep.
can
Yes,
you
they
hand
can.
me something?
Oh.
Still unmuted, Dr. Mike.
Oh,
Yes,
Sorry.
we're hearing you, Mike.
right
So
there.
Brandy,
No.
But yeah.
you would
um,
what? So you've had 4 episodes. You'd like
No.
people to go and watch them, right?
Yes.
To
Mhm.
learn from them, and then what? Where are you going next?
Sorry.
What happens next?
Well, right now they're on YouTube and they're also on Spreaker. So I think Winona has them up as Authors Reality. I have them up as Writing Reality on YouTube. So if you look for that, you'll find it. But our goal next is a 2nd season. We want to do another run through, taking the things that we've learned and tweaking and improving and maybe lengthening it a little bit. Giving more time for the audience to get to know the writers before we jump into the actual contest part, and maybe get to know the judges too. so that there's that emotional connection with the people involved in the show and their story before we introduce the showdown between the writers, so to speak.
Oh, I love that. That sounds really good. That sounds like a nice addition, a nice tweak to the show. Well, Nona, did you want to add anything?
Well, it's me after all, and I'm saying like I heard Brandy's story, and a week later I was like, I've got a house, I've got a crew, I've got a camera. I had a camera, and I've got contestants. All right, let's go. I didn't really stop to like, oh, how are the ways we can make this beautiful and really work out wonderful? I was like, let's get it done. So in that true spirit, I've set up meetings to start pitching the show so as a reality show to development executives. So yeah, I'll be doing that in a couple of weeks.
Awesome. That is so, you will do it too. You guys are going to land a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Hey, Wolf, so from a writer's perspective, what's next for you?
Well, so I'm working on the sequel to Cyberspiracy called Cyber Furry. It's going to come out next month. And it, of course, right now it's like the final push, doing all the polishing. So I'm going through every chapter. And also the series, it's for young people. So of course, in this day and age, it's gotta be multimedia. It's interactive, as one of my marketing people called it. So I'm going through right now and building all the links, because from the story, you can jump to articles, you can jump to music, you can jump to video. I mean, that's just the way it is nowadays. That is writing reality in the 21st century. That takes a lot of time, but that's what I'm working on right now. And then, of course, the sequel to that is in the works, because readers want to get the constant stream of new material. That's also writing reality.
Excellent. And where can people find you?
I'm wide, so you can get me anywhere on all the big vendors. I'm also in bookshop.org, paper, and it's worldwide. And funny, interestingly, I sell more paperbacks in Europe than I do ebooks, which just blows my mind given how much more expensive they are.
It is. Yes. Yeah. Very good. All right. And John, what's next up for you?
Well, the first my first novel is in the final editing stages. So it's been a long time, and it's finally almost ready to actually be published. But now the next for me is, I don't have a giant following on Twitter. I don't have a massive, any of that. And so visibility is what I'm working on.
Cool.
Visibility is what I'm working on. And so I'm an attorney, so I really try to I make sure one thing at a time. And so I'm outlining the sequel already as well, because while I've been working on the first book, it kept giving me ideas for the sequel in my writing process. My book started as one bullet point on my creative page that turned into a bullet point that I kept adding to until it was one bullet point page. And then that turned into 85 bullet pointed pages. So now the sequel is 60 pages bullet pointed. And so that's what I'm working on. I'm color coordinating it for arcs, so that when the first book is done and I'm publishing and I'm marketing and everything, I always like to have something to write. And like all the things I'm ever going to write, it's going to be real, but it's going to help people. It's also
Nice.
the sequel, so it's also a fantasy, a dystopian fantasy.
And are you on any social media now? Can people find you anywhere?
Yes, if you go to John R. Kyle on Facebook, that is where people can get updates. I post from Writer's Reality, the 4 episodes that Brandy sent to me. I post those on there. I love for content. It's just reading content. Anything about news, like when I read about Barnes & Noble opening all those stores, more stores last year than they did in all 10 years combined the year before, stuff like that, so that people understand that reading, it's important for a reason. So I like to keep things on there as well. So John R. Kyle on Facebook.
Thank you. And thank you, Brandy, for putting that in the chat. And Dr. Mike, where can people find you? What's next for you? You told us that you're working on your adventures with your daughter books. Is that what's next for you? And where can people find you?
Uh, let's see. Well, that's a lot of questions.
All right, what's next and where can people find
Right.
you?
Okay, well, what's next is I'm going to finish this book that I started when we were doing the contest, which is a completely different genre than the young adult ones that I am doing with my daughter, and different than anything else that I've done. It's really very in-depth. It's just there's only two characters in the book, and so it's an in-depth psychological study of well, I'm interested to see where it goes to um, with all of that. I'm pretty excited about it. I was going to be going to the book convention in Frankfurt, Germany next month, but it turns out that I will not be able to attend that. So I got a bit of a hole in the schedule, and so I'll be able to get quite a bit more writing done. And you said, what am I reading these days? And I just started this one. This one's very good. Boy, it has a lot of depth. It's called Becoming Supernatural by Joe
Who's the
Dispenza.
author?
Joe Dispenza is
Joe
the
Dispenza. Okay,
and
thank
he's
you.
been around for a long time. I've known him for many, many years, and I'm enjoying his new book.
All right. Well, Nona, what are you reading these days?
I am reading Art, Money, and Success. It feels weird to go to the nonfiction section of things, but it's by Maria Brophy. It's been educational, to say the least.
Okay, thank you for that recommendation. John, what are you reading?
There is a Pierce Brown wrote a series. In fact, it wasn't just a trilogy. I think he actually got an extra fourth or maybe even a fifth book, but the trilogy portion of it is Red Rising. That's the first book, and it's a science fiction world. I won't give away any spoilers or anything, but people are underground mining for helium-3, and it's a really cool story because he blends caste systems, like everyone's gold through reds are the bottom color. And when you learn it's really cool because it's science fiction. So, but the first book is about these like 18-year-olds training how to like build civilization, and then the second and third book are more intergalactic space battles with where the main character, does some things. So it's a really cool series for science fiction. I think it was published 2017 or so, but at least the first one was 2016. It's a really interesting book. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Brandy, what are you reading?
One of the books I recently read was called Master of Music, the Bardic Isle series, book 1. And that's by Marla Hamela, I think. And she did a masterful job of basically pulling you into the musical world and kind of teaching music as you're reading the book. But it's a beautiful fantasy world, and I really enjoyed it.
And Wolf, do you have a recommendation for our audience?
Yeah, Karen, I maintain an inspirational women and girls in tech book list at bookshop.org and Goodreads. And one of the recent additions is an incredibly inspirational, uplifting, and optimistic book by NASA astronaut Nicole Stott, Back to Earth. She just, and she opens with, she just really takes you there into space to her Earthrise moment, when she for the first time saw this out of world glowing ball in space. And it just, like most astronauts, it really drove home, how we are all together on spaceship Earth, as she calls it. And she's just so upbeat about it. And she also points out, she's not just, she's an astronaut, an aquanaut, but she's also a scientist, and she's an engineer. And she wanted to be a scientist since kindergarten, despite what her teachers said. And that in the end, technology is about solving problems that allow us to live together and survive. And she does this in such a beautiful way and so uplifting. So I highly recommend it to anybody. Give it to your kids, give it to your grandkids. She uses big words, so it's not write for kindergarten, but teenagers, they will really get her enthusiasm about the world and about technology and about the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And thank all of you for watching. Thank you for being with us. And I want to thank all of our guests and our audience. And I hope that I will see you next week. What are you reading? What are you writing? Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.